People ask me questions like this all the time. Do onions regrow hair? Should I eat pumpkin seeds? What do you think about this pepper? Will cutting out caffeine help my hair growth? Does this ancient grain stop hair loss? Have you heard of tomatoes? Should I go vegan? What about paleo? Will fasting stop my hair shedding? I want to try a coffee enema. This is Rob from Perfect Hair Health, and today we are going to be reacting to one of Google's top ranking articles for the search term, the best foods for hair growth. Now, I get this question all the time, and usually I like to refer people to Antonella Tosti's literature reviews on the topics of diet and nutrients and their impact on different hair loss disorders. This is because she does an excellent job detailing what we do and don't know about these subjects, so I'll put those links below. But when I ask people why they're emailing me these questions, they almost always tell me the same thing. I found an article about this on Google. This piqued my curiosity, so I decided to type in best foods for hair growth and see what came up. And for me, the very top ranking article is this Healthline article, 14 best foods for hair growth. So let's dive into this and see what kind of advice they're giving. And as somebody who regularly publishes papers about hair loss disorders, whether I think this advice is worthy of its top rank in this search engine. The first thing to note is this article essentially has all of the signals for credibility that we can ask for. It's top ranked on Google, it's a big name website, it's got this evidence-based thingy over here, it's got in-text citations, it's even written by somebody with a master's in science and who's also a registered dietitian. So obviously, if I'm concerned about hair loss, I type this into Google, then I click on this article, I see these markers, I'm probably going to trust the website and the information it's conveying. The problem is, Google doesn't always prioritize good medical information. They really just prioritize the perception of good medical information. That's a critical distinction. And these markers, these things that we're seeing here, they're all signals that increase my own perception of credibility. That's not to say that we shouldn't look for these things or these articles that have these. I think that they're valuable and that we should. Personally, I love that this article is written by a registered dietitian. It's just that these markers, they're not going to really help us evaluate the validity of the article's content. They just tell us that we should probably trust its information. So let's see if perceptions line up with reality. All right, the 14 best foods for hair growth. Number 1. Eggs. Eggs are a great source of protein and biotin, two nutrients that may promote hair growth. Okay, what is the basis for that statement? Eating adequate protein is important for hair growth because hair follicles are made of mostly protein. A lack of protein in the diet has been shown to promote hair loss. So this is true so far. Malnutrition with protein has been shown to induce something known as a telogen effluvium-based shed. These are caused by a variety of factors, but basically they're just dysregulations to our hair cycle, whereby our normal shedding rate moves from that 10 to 15% category over that 20% threshold in our scalps. If that happens for a pathological reason, be it a nutrient deficiency, chronic stress, a traumatic life event, we can end up being diagnosed with something known as a telogen effluvium-based shed. So we see this often with people who are doing crash diets, people who are doing restrictive diets whereby protein is significantly reduced. We also see it very commonly in the developing world whereby protein is just harder to come by. But for people in the developed world who are going to be reading this article, protein deficiencies are relatively uncommon outside of the context that I just mentioned, unless you have some sort of chronic disease that prevents absorption. So not necessarily completely relevant to most people reading this article. Nonetheless, I'm not too dissatisfied with the advice so far. So let's keep going. Research has shown that consuming more biotin can help improve hair growth in people with a biotin deficiency. I want to challenge this claim. So I'm going to click into their reference and see what comes up. All right, this is a review article on the use of biotin for hair loss. I'm actually really familiar with this article. This is what I thought they were going to be citing to. So if we scroll down here, we're going to see that this study, this review article, is actually a summary of a bunch of case reports on individuals who have supplemented with biotin and seen hair regrowth. The bigger question is, who were these individuals? Let's look at that age column. Looks like the oldest person in these 16, 17, 18 individuals is 5 years old. So you're looking at young children. And if we actually dig deeper into the study, you realize that these are young children with a genetic mutation called a biotinidase deficiency. That's an enzyme that allows us to assimilate biotin into the body. An enzyme deficiency and this genetic mutation occurs in 1 out of every 110,000 individuals. And for these people, yes, biotin supplementation can help improve hair growth. The thing is that this is irrelevant to the overwhelming majority of people who are actually supplementing with biotin in the developed world for hair growth, because the biotin deficiencies that we see in moderation in the developed world aren't this severe. On that note, I know about a researcher, Ralph Trueb, who has published papers about this. In fact, he demonstrated that in women who were concerned about hair thinning, who also got biotin deficiency tests, many of them actually were moderately deficient in biotin, but supplementing with biotin really only improved their dermatitis. It did not improve their hair loss outcomes dramatically. So what can we glean from this? It's that the advice that this Healthline article is giving us right here is a little bit misrepresentative of the populations they're citing to back up their claims, and that is a problem. So, first point about protein, give them a pass. The second point, I'm going to push back a little bit. Food number 2, berries. So berries are apparently loaded with beneficial compounds and vitamins that may promote hair growth. Okay, this includes vitamin C, which has strong antioxidant properties. Their basis for including berries for a hair growth promoting diet is that it has vitamin C, and that vitamin C is an antioxidant that can help to neutralize free radicals. I agree with all of those statements. The problem is that vitamin C is not unique to berries. So to recommend berries for vitamin C for hair growth versus oranges or citrus fruits that also contain vitamin C, it's a bit of an arbitrary judgment call here. So why would we recommend berries over any of the other things that I just described? On that note, there's very little evidence linking vitamin C with hair loss outcomes. It's included as one of dozens of ingredients in nutritional supplements that help regrow hair. But to delineate the effects of the hair growth from those supplements on vitamin C versus other things, that's really hard to do. And to my knowledge, there have been no significant studies demonstrating that vitamin C by itself is a promoter of hair growth. Now, obviously, at the extremes, a deficiency like in biotin or in vitamin C is going to become problematic. In fact, at the very extremes, if we just stop eating altogether, we'll die and we can't grow hair when we're dead. I'm going to say that first, I haven't seen any strong evidence linking vitamin C deficiencies to any hair loss disorder of note. And secondly, I'm having a hard time rationalizing why the selection of vitamin C through berries is any more relevant than anything else. We can't just randomly start eating berries for vitamin C when we can get vitamin C from thousands of other things. Okay, moving on. Food number 3, spinach. Interesting. Spinach is a healthy green vegetable that's loaded with beneficial nutrients like folate, iron, vitamin A, and vitamin C, all of which may promote hair growth. Again, folate deficiencies, iron deficiencies, vitamin A and vitamin C deficiencies, they're probably going to be problematic in the general context of overall health, and probably hair as well. If you get deficient enough in anything, you'll begin to see problems. The question is always, what's the cutoff point for when you start to see excessive hair shedding? And are those cutoff points reflective of the population that's going to be reading this content and then acting upon it? So vitamins A, vitamin C, folate, iron, these things are ubiquitous in so many other foods. To recommend spinach over anything else feels very random to me. I don't know how they're arriving to these conclusions. We could just as easily recommend 1,000 other foods that achieve the same recommendation. But again, this is a listicle, and these are the problems with listicles. People build their advice based off of the number of random items featured on a clickbait headline that then formulate their belief systems over what regrows hair and what doesn't. And so far, I'm not seeing anything of note here that makes me say I'm on 100% agreement with these people. Moving on. Number 4, fatty fish. A study in 120 women found that taking a supplement containing omega-3 and omega-6 fatty acids, as well as antioxidants, reduced hair loss and increased hair density. It's time to go and click into this study link and see if they're accurately summarizing this. I actually really love the design of this study. We have 120 women, we have randomization, we have a control group who's not receiving the supplement, we have a group that is receiving the supplement, and we have really objective hair markers. This study found favorable results for a supplement, but let's see if the supplement contained omega-3 fatty acids, as in fish, or other things. This supplement actually contained a lot of different things. What of the hair growth promoting effects are coming from the vitamin E? What are coming from the black currant seed oil? What are coming from the fish oil? We just can't tell. And so to recommend people eat fish because a supplement that contains fish oil and then half a dozen other things saw hair growth outcomes that were positive in women with Ludwig 1 female pattern hair loss. To recommend that back to fish, again, this is a big leap here. We want to be careful about making these types of recommendations. We can't apply the results of this study, which concentrates these specific substances from a variety of different sources, and then relate that back to individuals who are now going to start eating fish because this study found a positive result from one of the components of that fish in one of the components of this supplement. I mean, why don't we take this a step further? Zinc, in certain contexts in Petri dish studies, has 5-alpha reductase inhibiting properties. So should we all just start eating oysters to help promote hair growth? No, because those studies are super context specific, and it would be a little bit reckless of somebody to recommend that just because zinc in one specific situation in a cell culture can reduce 5-alpha reductase activity, that because now you're eating oysters, you're going to get the same effect. That's just not how biology works. The second problem with this study is that it was conducted on women with a Ludwig 1 scale for female pattern hair loss. Now, that's one of the earliest identifiable stages for female pattern hair loss. So why is that relevant? Well, let's look a little bit further into the study design. They excluded volunteers presenting with telogen effluvium rates of greater than 30%. So that basically leaves between the 20% threshold and the 30% threshold for telogen effluvium up for grabs in this case. So you can still technically qualify with telogen effluvium for more minor causes, but still be diagnosed with Ludwig 1 female pattern hair loss. Well, guess what the beginning of androgenic alopecia for men and women is? It's actually a big telogen effluvium based shed within the 20 to 30 percentage point thresholds for telogen effluvium. Again, this is the subclinical area of telogen effluvium based shedding, but it still is relevant. I bring this up because researchers have written about how hard it is to discern early telogen effluvium based sheds from androgenic alopecia. And when you design a study such that its diagnostic criteria will only exclude people on the basis of greater than 30% telogen effluvium sheds, but you allow for the inclusion of people between 20% to 30%, that means that you might actually be capturing people supplementing with a nutritional supplement who actually do have telogen effluvium based shedding, albeit from less severe causes like moderate vitamin D deficiencies, moderate iron deficiencies, and yet now these people are getting confused as female pattern hair loss sufferers. So again, I love the design of this study, but I think that their selection criteria for participants allows for some bias in results interpretation and maybe some obfuscation of the actual effectiveness of this pill projected into the general population. Again, these are little things. It's not like this is a reason to completely dismiss an article altogether. It's just from a consumer perspective, not a lot of people think about these things. It really takes a research mindset to know what to look for in study inclusion and exclusion criteria, especially for participants, before we start making these recommendations. So the individual who wrote this article is a registered dietitian. They're recommending to eat fatty fish on the basis of the fact that fish oil was included in a supplement as one of nearly a dozen ingredients for hair growth that showed a positive outcome. It's a big jump, but nonetheless, let's keep moving. Another study found that taking a fish oil supplement significantly reduced hair loss and increased hair growth in women with thinning hair. I have a feeling that I know what this study is. This is a study on Viviscal, and I have looked into Viviscal in depth. We have massive reviews about them inside of our membership community. The thing that Viviscal does is exactly what I just described. They will exclude patients with telogen effluvium on the basis of really severe forms of it. But then they'll include women who likely do have telogen effluvium, but it's from moderate degrees of stress, dietary deficiencies, nutrient deficiencies, hormonal fluctuations. And then they'll qualify them as self-perceived hair thinners. And then they give them a supplement that contains a lot of the things that they're likely deficient in. They regrow a bit of hair, and they take that study and then they advertise it to people who don't fit that criteria, like androgenic alopecia sufferers. So I've seen this article before. I've done a review about it before. I'm really familiar with it. If we just type in self-perceived, we can find in the search self-perceived thinning hair associated with poor diet, stress, hormonal influences, or abnormal menstrual cycles. Two problems still exist. We can't discern the effectiveness of the omega-3 fatty acid inclusion from all the other ingredients in this study. That's problem number one. And problem number two, we can't extrapolate the potential benefits of omega-3 fatty acids from this single study to fish. It's just a quantum leap that we just don't want to make when we're making recommendations for people suffering from hair loss disorders. Number 5. Sweet potatoes. Vitamin A could also speed up the rate of hair growth and encourage growth of thicker hair, all while preventing other hair follicles from regressing. Okay, that's true of some forms of vitamin A when combined with other treatments, but I've never actually seen data on beta carotene doing this. So let's click into these references and see what they're all about. All right, the first one is on a form of vitamin A known as retinoids. Retinoids are not beta carotene. Carotenoids are beta carotene. Retinoids are the animal form of vitamin A, retinol, which then becomes retinoic acid. In clinical studies, retinoic acid as an adjunct ingredient to minoxidil has helped to improve activity of an enzyme known as sulfotransferase, which is one of the rate-limiting activation factors for the topical minoxidil compound, which is the enzyme that topical minoxidil has to come into contact with in order to activate on the skin. So when you combine isotretinoin, which is the synthetic version of retinoic acid, with topical minoxidil, you amplify the effectiveness of minoxidil because more of the minoxidil activates can have an effect on our hair follicles. Carotenoids are not retinoids, and beta carotene from a sweet potato is not the same vitamin A that will convert from animal vitamin A. We need retinol from animal products like liver to convert into retinoic acid, and then that retinoic acid has the effects that we're looking for. Beta carotene has different conversion pathways. So this is an apples to oranges comparison. All right, second link that they had for this, retinoids and hair growth. So it's the same mistake repeated over again. I'm not disagreeing with the claim that vitamin A, when applied topically, could improve hair growth outcomes as an adjuvant ingredient with 5% minoxidil. I am disagreeing with the fact that the vitamin A in sweet potatoes would actually do that. Not necessarily seeing the benefits of this specific article for hair loss sufferers yet. None of these things for somebody in the developed world who is already nutrient replete, not significantly inflamed due to consuming allergens, and isn't in a massive protein deficiency. None of these recommendations so far are likely going to move the needle for their hair loss outcomes. But let's keep going, give them the benefit of the doubt, continue on. Number 6, avocados. So the claim here is that people should eat more avocados because it contains vitamin E. I'm aware of this study. It contains some significant problems. Let's check it out. All right, so this study measures the effects of a vitamin A supplement on individuals who are seeking to grow more hair on their scalps. The big thing here is that the problem in this study is the methods. The patient population concluded that 38 male and female volunteers ranging from 18 to 60 years old who met the inclusion criteria were recruited into the trial. What was the inclusion criteria? Having various ranges of hair loss, ranging from patchy loss of scalp hair to more severe loss of scalp hair. I don't think that that is descriptive enough at all. Were these individuals suffering from telogen effluvium? Were these individuals dealing with alopecia areata? Because that's patchy related hair loss. So we don't know the type of hair loss these individuals are suffering from. And that creates a limitation because the different types of hair loss correspond to different causes, which correspond to different treatments. And if we're seeing a significant effect from vitamin E supplementation in terms of hair growth, it's likely that these individuals are likely dealing with a telogen effluvium related shed, which is supposed to be temporary, and in this case, potentially related to a nutrient deficiency. That constitutes just a fraction of the overall population dealing with hair loss disorders. So the lacking specificity here means that we actually can't draw conclusions of the vitamin E used here to other studies. In fact, I'm aware of some toxicity studies that have demonstrated that taking too much vitamin E can actually have the opposite impact on our health and potentially our hair that we're looking for. So we have to be really careful with the way that we interpret information like this. Nonetheless, I don't think that getting 21% of our daily vitamin E recommendations through an avocado is going to move the needle significantly, especially when we compare the dosage recommendations in that study, which was hundreds of % per day in an isolated supplement, to the vitamin E that we're going to be getting from eating an avocado. I don't know. I don't see that this is going to be a significant game changer for anybody. Number 7, nuts. We're just going to move on. Seeds are very similar to nuts. Same recommendations. It's the same stuff recommended over and over again, just in different ways. We're going to move on. Sweet peppers, vitamin C. Oysters have zinc. Wonderful. Doesn't mean it's going to be a game changer when consumed as oysters for our hair. Shrimp. Well, all these things contain the same stuff that the other things contain. Beans, okay. Soybeans, okay. Meat, all right. Same type of argument over and over again. And with that, we have finished our analysis of this article. Do I think that this article contains helpful information in the broader context of health? Absolutely. Do I think that the information is relevant to people fighting hair loss who actually have the capabilities to read this article? Absolutely not. If you are an average hair loss sufferer who's an adult living in the developed world, who has female or male pattern hair loss with small bouts of telogen effluvium, this article is likely completely irrelevant to you. And obviously, we should all avoid foods that are inflammatory or allergenic. And that's why individual diets for some people will help to promote health outcomes, but for others, the same diet could hurt them. In any case, do I think that this article is deserving of its top rank in Google? I think that Google has an opportunity to do a little bit of a better job here, prioritizing information that's actually actionable. Again, Healthline has a lot of great articles on other subjects. I'm not criticizing the company as a whole. I think that its existence does a lot of good for individuals. But this article on hair growth and foods, it's really missing the mark for their own standards. So I think we can wrap this up by saying that this article, not the best thing to be ranking at the front page of Google. Doesn't mean that it's completely useless, but I think that actionable advice for hair loss sufferers is important. And this article is missing the mark there, because you could eat all these foods and not see a significant improvement to most hair loss outcomes, particularly androgenic alopecia, which is one of the most common hair loss disorders, and its incidence tends to increase 10% per decade over the course of adulthood. So if you live long enough, basically everybody has that. In fact, we have a video on this that we've already released, Is Everybody Balding? So check that out. We will be back next week with more deep dives into articles and other topics related to hair. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Please feel free to subscribe below and look forward to next week's content. Take care.